Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of some of the stuff that is hard to find anywhere else except right here on this radio station and this radio show, the Universal Consciousness Show. We try to entertain you, we educate you, we try to open your mind, we stretch your mind, and sometimes we blow your mind away, and we'll try to do that again today. We have so much fun doing that. And also, my name is Aage, and I'm one of the hosts. Diana, my co-host, is over in Germany. Are you there, Diana?
I am here. Hello, everyone.
Hey, hey. And first, for those of you that want to listen to this show again, you can find us where we archive it on our website as www.universal-consciousness-show.com, and we're on YouTube under Universal Consciousness Show, and please subscribe. That will help us a lot. And we're on Facebook and Twitter and just about everywhere else out there in the media. We're the station, and we put it up. So we're going to have some fun here. Today we have a phenomenal guest with us. She is Paola Harris, and I hope I pronounced that right, because she is an import to the United States, just like I am. And Paola is one of the best-known personalities in the field of ufology. She is an Italiano, and I hope I said that right, American photojournalist, an investigative reporter in the field of extraterrestrial-related phenomena. She is widely published, and she's a freelance writer, especially in Europe. She has a lot of contacts back there, and she does functions back there too. She has interviewed and become personal friends with many of the, or if not most, of the high-profile UFO investigators in the world. And this includes even, she was assisting Dr. J. Allen Hynek in his UFO research. And everybody that has ever heard the word UFO know who he is. Since she is multilingual, she also helped Colonel Philip Corso translate his book, The Day After Roswell, into Italiano. And she wrote the preface for his Italian book. She has written a number of books on her own, and I want her to speak about that because I looked at those, and there's a phenomenal amount of information in there that will answer a lot of the questions that many of us have when it comes to this paranormal issue of extraterrestrials and strange things flying around in the sky. She is also in the video Fast Walker that is put out by Safe Space producer Robert Miles. And after talking to Robert Miles about this, and he says there probably is about 100 million of that particular video that is in circulation around the world. So that's phenomenal. She also interviewed the ex-Canadian Minister of Defense that actually kind of gave us disclosure a few years ago. His name is Paul Hellyer. And it's amazing when someone as the Minister of Defense come out and say, yeah, the aliens are here, and he explained the issues, and everybody ignores it. And gosh, I want her to speak to that a little bit because, yeah, we really have had disclosure, kind of, and nobody is talking about it. So I really like to hear her view on that. She has also spoken in many European countries and a lot more. There's, I looked at her bio, and I got to call it short here because otherwise it'll take me 20 minutes to get to do everything. I want to hear about what Paola has to say. Paola, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aage, and thank you so much for asking me. You know, you're right. Disclosure's already happened. I like that you said that. We have so much proof and so much information, you don't need anything else.
Yeah, we've already been there, and now people still are arguing about it. But before we go there, Diana, are you still with us there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, Paola, and thank you so
Hello.
much here today. For the beginning, could you please tell us, such in a squeeze story, what was the turning point in your life that brought you on this path? So how did it all begin for you?
Well, Diana, I'm glad you asked me. And for a woman, it's been very, very difficult to do this because most of the researchers in my field are men. But what happened to me was I have a master's in education, and I was teaching English for 30 years. From 1994 to 2007, when I came back to the United States, I was teaching at the American Overseas School of Rome, so I was living in Europe. And actually, Europe is where I really perfected my career because the idea of dealing with this kind of study as a study in Europe is much more serious than it is in the United States. In 1979, I saw the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and I was teaching an English class called Science Fiction, and the end of that film where Francois Truffaut plays Jacques Vallée has contact with the beings by musical tones and he has real contact at the end, really moved me to tears. So I didn't understand why I had that reaction. I began to look at the Spielberg consultant, and it was Dr. Alan Hynek. And by coincidence, I was in a wedding in Evanston, Illinois, where the Center for UFO Studies was located. So when I went to the wedding, I took some time and went to the Center for UFO Studies. Now, Dr. Hynek was working with the Air Force in Blue Book and left because he changed his mind. So I wanted to go and see what files he had. And when I walked into the Center for UFO Studies, he was there. And I was in shock. And he said to me, well, you speak Italian. Maybe you would like to work with me because there are so many sightings in Italy and you can translate the files. So for 6 years until he died in 1986, he died in 86, I was working with him. So it was like 6 years of knowing this was real, of seeing the files, and of working with an astronomer. So you can't get any better than that. You know that this is not a joke. You know this is real.
Yeah. Yeah, about him, though, a lot of the things he said, he had to walk both sides of the fence, because there are certain things he probably couldn't say, or he could be thrown out of the scientific community. But when you got him by himself, I'm sure he told you the real story.
Well, yeah, I think that happens with a lot of scientists, because he told me that Carl Sagan knew it was real too, but Carl Sagan couldn't talk about it publicly. Carl Sagan had seen the Blue Book files. He couldn't talk about it publicly because he would lose his funding at Cornell University. Yeah. So this is very difficult for people in the mainstream, but I think they do it anyway. They just don't talk about it, because I know Carl Sagan was really interested, and he was friends with Hynek, and all of these scientists were probably calling him. But to come out public takes a tremendous amount of courage.
Oh, yeah. And it could be devastating if you do it wrong.
Well, it's devastating because the people that manage this want to keep it in the entertainment phase, and that's one of the problems I'm even having today, is that most of the ufology out there becomes entertainment instead of an academic study. And I always, I'm a teacher with a master's, so I would never give a high grade to somebody who never read a book. And I can't understand the researchers who just read their own book and think they know ufology. In my house, I have 300 books, and I've read everybody's work in order to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and now, ufology is progressing. The other day I watched a video with mainstream TV with Wallace. He was interviewing somebody in the 1950s on it, and it was very aggressive about towards the guest. But now it has developed to the point where I think the majority of people, I hope I'm right on this, they really accept that, yes, the aliens could actually be here. What is the most important thing that you have run across lately that really people should know about that?
Well, I'm a teacher. I have a master's in education. When you study this, you have to study it chronologically. So what we have is, the program Ancient Aliens, and that shows you all the intervention of ancient alien cultures, and you can go on forever there. That's a whole other study. But the modern ufology started with the Roswell incident because it was in New Mexico, and 16th of July when the atomic bomb exploded on the Trinity site near Socorro, and I've been there so many times. What happened was that that bomb exploded, and there were a number of visitations looking at our capacity for nuclear, for destroying ourselves in other dimensions. So there wasn't just one crash in Roswell in 47. There were 4 crashes. And what happened was, people say, well, if they're so advanced, why do they crash? We had at that time this radar that was portable, that can move, and the interaction with the radar and their navigation system brought down quite a few of these craft. Plus, the New Mexico area has a lot of thunder and lightning storms. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the beginning of modern ufology, I mean, they're going to say it's 1947. I'm going to say it's 1945. That these people, these cultures, and I hate to call them aliens, or I'd rather call them space people, started coming down to visit or look at what we were doing in that area, the area of the time of the atomic bomb explosion, the time when we were. Roswell is where the 2 airplanes that dropped the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima were stationed. So if you study this in geopolitical terms, these beings went to where this historical stuff was happening. And what I found out, because my books that you mentioned, there's 5 of them, are mostly interviews with military and intelligence people like Robert Salas, who was at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1969 when UFOs shut down 10 nuclear missiles, that had nuclear warheads. They shut them down one by one by one. If we're looking at the nuclear component of why the visitations on Earth were giving us messages of a very important kind that you can start connecting the dots.
Yeah, and from what I hear also, that was not the only place that this happened. They have been interfering with military material like this in later days too.
Yeah, they actually initiated the launch codes in Russia, and the Russians, because we had the Cold War in '69, and we were, the United States was pointing missiles at Russia. Russia was pointing missiles at the United States. And what the beings did, and that's why I don't believe they're hostile, is that they basically just shut down the missiles in the United States, and you could bring them back up again. And in Russia, they stopped the launch codes. It's just like saying, look, we're here. We're watching your insanity. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to destroy yourselves, as you have in many other times. And it becomes more of warning and more messages. And your program is called Consciousness, Universal Consciousness. And the bottom line, after 30 years of studying this with real credible people, is the message is that the consciousness of this planet needs to match the technology.
Yeah, and the technology is lagging. I think that for the mass of people now, they're waking up in hordes and the consciousness is rising. But I don't see the technology doing that yet.
Well, it's who's in charge of technology. This, I always tell everybody, if they're coming from other planets, they must care about something. And they probably have a collective consciousness, which means they do what's good for everybody. And here in the planet, we do not do what's good for everybody. We have a free will, and what we are is extremely selfish and self-centered. And the consciousness, maybe in these other planets, maybe they went through that period or they went through that history and realized they better all come together and unify because they weren't going to survive. And I think that that's what needs to happen here. The message is, you better come together, all of you, because there are no borders seen from space. So you look at this planet, you don't see the borders from space. You just see water and land. And I remember Edgar Mitchell, who was a very good friend of mine, the Apollo 14 astronaut, said that's what he saw. That's what he experienced, and he didn't understand where people were fighting over this on the planet.
Yeah, I heard him say that too. And when you look at it from out there, it takes on a totally different mindset, because we realize that there are no borders and we're all one species that needs to get along. And I think, though, that I am very optimistic about this, at least in my timeline. I think we are raising the consciousness, so we're going to have a chance to make it.
Well, that's why we're working. I think that all of us that are working at this have hope and are optimistic. Otherwise, it would be a lost cause. And I think that good information and study and spirituality, the idea that we have to get along here before we think of getting along with extraterrestrial cultures, is so very important.
Yeah. And now we're talking about, there's a lot of talk about the disclosure. And my opinion, of course, is basically worthless because I'm not in charge of anything. But what do you think if disclosure became commonly accepted that, yes, they are here and they are even out there? What would that do to politics and governments, do you think?
Well, like you, I already believe in disclosure. The people that don't want to or can't handle it, I mean, I don't think it's governments that are hiding it. I don't think it's the church. I don't think it's institutions. I think that once you understand the reality that we're not alone, it changes your life. And in my case, like in my family, they don't ever want to talk about this subject, and they've never read my books, and they don't want to go there. And the reason they gave me was, this has nothing to do with my everyday life of going to work, making money, and feeding my children. This has nothing to do with that, because they aren't on the evolutionary level where they want to know. So I have this theory, which isn't very popular, Aage, that it's the people who keep the secret, not the... Because if you want to know if this is real, you just need to listen to all of the testimonies, even Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project that has radar people, it has military people, it has people who worked at NASA that are not lying. They're telling you the truth. The truth is out there, but a lot of the people don't want to deal with it because, I mean, quite frankly, it does change your life. It makes you responsible for the planet, and it throws you into a particular spirituality where you need to do something, and a lot of people don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. And of course, like you said, you have to look into the past and the chronologic progression of the extraterrestrial issue. We see statutes, we see drawings, and we see all kinds of artifacts from thousands of years ago. It says very clearly we have entities that don't look like us, and they are supposed to come from space.
Well, they can also come from dimensionally. I believe that some of it is interdimensional, some of it is interplanetary, some of it is just on another, place on Earth, like I was just in Crestone, Colorado, and craft are coming out of the mountain, and they're coming out of mountains. Like there's certain mountains in certain areas where they live in the mountain area. In Peru, Ricardo Gonzalez's work, and may I suggest a book called Contact from Apu by Ricardo Gonzalez, who talks about the mountain of Huascaran in the Andes, where not only do the craft come out, but the people, the Apunians come out and interact with the peasants and the people that are tilling the soil and the people in the town. They interact with them in the Andes. They're people, they're regular people, but their base is in the mountain of Huascaran in the Andes. So we also have them here. It's very complex, this subject matter. It is not either or, and neither are there three kinds, reptilian, greys, and Nordics. It's ridiculous kind of silliness that we shove these people into three boxes. And the reason why I tell you this is because I had Clifford Stone's book published. Clifford Stone was Crash Retrieval, and in 1969 to the 2000s, and he told me he had a manual in his hand where there were 57 different type of species that if they had to do first aid, they had to look at the manual for the 57 different types so they wouldn't kill them, so they wouldn't put some medical thing on them that may kill them. Now, if he's got a manual that's 57 species, what are we putting them in three boxes for?
Yeah. Wow.
But Paola, tell me, if you, according to your knowledge, do you think that some of them extraterrestrial beings, especially the one that try to help us always, do you think they could be a future form of us?
That is exactly what the book Contacts from Planet Apu says, that they are time travelers. They're coming back in time to try to change a timeline where we have already destroyed ourselves. And they give you details. That book has details of what happened. And then they said that we evacuated the planet and had to go to different planets to survive. And it's very interesting because a lot of my work, and I couldn't, when I was working in the beginning with Dr. Hynek, I just couldn't deal with ETs or time travel or any of that. I just wanted to record, very specific details. Now I've been pushed into thinking about time travel and timelines and the return of us. Actually, a lot of the humans went to other planets, and now those humans are coming back. And I've had to, and if I had other people to talk about this with, like a serious think tank of scientists and people, my life would be richer. But let me tell you, Diana, I'm dealing with a lot of crazy people out there who don't do any research, who cannot really cite credible witnesses, and it becomes science fiction and crazy. And I would love to have a serious study done.
Yeah, and have a mind trust that will have the same experiences like you and put it all together. That could open up some doors.
Well, universities don't want to touch it, unfortunately. And, and it belongs in the university. This is not ufology. This is the history of planet Earth. Mm-hmm. This is social sciences. This is psychology. Even Carl Jung wrote about these cases. It's history, psychology, anthropology. It's all of those serious subjects that you study in college, and we can't get past the little gray alien, the T-shirts, the silliness, the carnival atmosphere, the parades. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and then we have all these mummies that has been found, and the 12, 15 foot tall skeletons, and all this is hidden away too. And then we know those were most likely Earthlings that has been here thousands of years ago, and they don't even want to talk about that.
Well, it changes the history that's been written.
Yeah.
And you know how powerful history is, because history tells a story, and if you change the history, then the real truth comes out, and there's a lot of hidden things about history. So they don't want, especially anthropology, recognized. But that will change. I see anthropology as at least it's a form of a discipline. It's a university discipline. But ufology, or the contact of extraterrestrials with Earth, is not a discipline. It is not taken seriously, and it is not studied. And that is the real sad part.
Yeah, it is. And just for yourself, though, have you seen any unexplainable events or things in the sky yourself?
Well, I live in I live near Crestone, Colorado, and when Dr. Greer did the movie Sirius, we were down there for 6 days, and we were there for 6 days, and we captured craft on film, but it was only done with certain protocols that were spiritual. I mean, Dr. Greer did the puja ceremony in Sanskrit. We were totally quiet. The group that was there invited them to be seen. And if you watch the movie Sirius, there was a huge craft that sat over our heads, but then within like 3 minutes, 2 F-16s, one from one side and one from the other. And I don't think they knew why they were supposed to go there. I think they knew there was a target, but they didn't know it was a UFO. When those two planes came, one on one side and one on the other, the craft just shot away.
Wow! And you saw that craft, huh?
Oh yeah, all of us saw it. It's in the movie. If you want to see the movie Sirius, I think it's on Netflix, and it's beautiful, and we tried, and Dr. Greer does this, and so do a lot of people do these close encounter protocols to invite craft to be part of it. And if it's done without a circus atmosphere, if it's done with a spiritual, Ricardo Gonzalez does this in Monte Perdido, he does it in Spain, and he does it in the summer, and I've been there when that's happened and when the craft come. And, there is contact. I mean, but you have to work at it, and the intention is what's the most important. You have to have an intention that's good. It can't be just let me see what there is. It has to be can you appear, and what can we do together to make the Earth better? How can we work together with you people, you space people? How can we work together? It has to be like that.
Yeah. Curiosity doesn't really carry the same message. It's got to be a meaning behind it. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, you said in Arizona. My God, there's so many sightings in Arizona. Let's not even talk about the Phoenix Lights and all kinds of anomalies. Yeah. But I think that in sacred places, and there are sacred places in the mountains in Arizona, I think that the Native Americans always saw the star people. I think they always communicated with the star people, because I think the closer you are to the planet, the closer you are to Earth, to Mother Earth, to Pachamama, the way the Latin Americans call it, the closer you are to the planet, the more you're involved with extraterrestrial cosmic events.
Yeah. Have you tried using the 4th generation night vision goggles, which allow you to see higher up into the light spectrum than what our eyes can do, so you can?
Yeah, my God. Yeah, we had them. We had them in Crestone. I have them. We had them with Ricardo Gonzalez. Yes, we have them. They're very expensive, but you certainly can see UFOs because they're shooting in the sky faster than they're definitely not satellites. They're definitely not stars. You can see them. I imagine you have too, right?
I have not. I don't have one, but I know it works. And from what I hear people are doing, they can see the discs, the triangles. They fly in. They're everywhere out there. You can see them with those goggles.
Yes, but they're military grade binoculars. And they cost over $4,000, so your average person can't buy them.
Yeah,
and they're military grade. And I've seen them. I've seen UFOs through the night screening. Yes, but I think you can see them if you go to a mountain area and there's no light pollution, like Crestone, like Mount Shasta, like the Pyrenees. In the Pyrenees, it was Monte Perdito. In Sardinia, there's the mountains in Italy. And if you go to these places where there's no light pollution, you will definitely see craft. You will definitely see them.
Absolutely. And now I see that we're down at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to take a 3-minute break, and then we'll be back talking to Paola Harrison again. And I'd like to know when we get back a little more about what does she think the mindset of these visitors are. How do they think of us? And we're going to get into some interesting stuff. So stay with us, and we'll go to break and be back.
There are days that the red pill is bitter in my stomach, but I can't get it back out. I think because I have to. I speak because I have no choice. I walk through this dark age we're in with open eyes. Listen to Open Eyes on latenightinthemidlands.com. And together, maybe we won't stumble and fall.
Data. The sensors can't penetrate the planet's ionosphere. There's too much interference. Can you find a way to scan for life forms?
I would be happy to, sir. I just love scanning for life forms. Life forms. You tiny little life forms. You precious little life forms. Where are you?
Even the ETs know this is the place to be. LNM Radio Network.
You can listen to the LNM Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from LNMRadioNetwork.com or TalkStreamLive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
Ever wanted to be sure your robot slave was behaving? Is Echo getting out of control and meeting with Alexa when you're not around? You need RoboGrog. RoboGrog is the new product from Snooze You Lose, the company that also brought you the fine products of Flog a Horse and Calm You Down Now. RoboGrog will put your robotic minions to sleep, bringing their AI a sense of peace and comfort. It does this by sending bolts of electricity straight where the sun doesn't shine. Get RoboGrog today at any fine retailer and set yourself free from the devices that bind you.
You can't just throw someone into prison and silence their warning because you don't agree with them. You don't have to like my methods or what I stand for. Silencing me won't make the problem go away. It will just whittle away at the ability of people to be ready for the real threats. And when the worst happens, and it will, maybe you can take comfort in protecting the people from a dangerous radical who wanted to tell them the truth.
Tired of searching for great talk and great information? Look no more. LNM Radio Network, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Back home, there's a growing pro-Earth movement. Rumors of hate groups targeting aliens. And on all sides, the fanatics think that society has to be protected against anyone who's different. I'm starting to wonder if what we just saw is a preview of things to come.
I can't believe they'd be that foolish. Santayana. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
hello, and we are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and we're talking with Paola Harris. And Diana?
Yes, Paola, as Aage said before the break, what do you think do we know until now about the mindset of extraterrestrial, and how do they feel about us?
Well, that's a very complex question, because who are the they? I mean, if there's 57 different species, which ones are we talking about? So the only way I can answer that and answer it in a really intellectual way is to discuss about maybe 2 or 3 cases that I did. And that would answer what those beings were thinking. So it's better for me to give you, because you can't just throw around generalizations. The people that are coming, the different groups that are coming have different messages. So I did the Charles Hall case. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Charles Hall was a weatherman on the Area 51 base in 1965. And it took me 2 years to get his testimony about the tall whites that were guests on it wasn't Area 51, it was the Indian Springs facility, which is really Area 53. And he's written books, and people should read them. And and if you want a book list of people that really had these experiences, I can give you the book list. But the books that Charles Hall wrote, and he's military, he's now working in a military base still, it's called Millennial Hospitality, and I think there's 5 books. And in 1965, he interacted with tall white beings in the Indian Springs facility. He said there was nearly 300 of them, and he said they had their children with them. They look very much like us, but they live to be at least 600 or 700 years old. And it was that they were using that facility near Area 51 as a stopover base. It was a base between planets. But the only way they could be housed there was that there was a technology exchange. And his books were fascinating, and I actually flew him to that area so he could retell his stories, because the beings had children with them. And they would say to Charles in the books, Millennial Hospitality, we love our children more than you love your children. And Charles, would ask the reason why. And these beings said that they were here, that they basically were traversing the universe, and that we were very hostile. We were a hostile species. And he has details of different interactions he had with the being called the teacher, and the fact she would bring over 3 children to watch him do the weather balloons, because they were bored on that base, and the 3 alien children would look through the theodolite and see him put up the weather balloons. This is real. He is a military man. He lived this in 1965, and then he was transferred to Vietnam. So that group that he couldn't tell me where they were from. He thinks they were from Barnard Star, wherever that is, because he asked the teacher, where are you people from? And she said, what difference would it make? We call our planets differently than you do, which is logical, because I'm sure they don't call their planet Venus or Mars or whatever, because we named them that. We on planet named them that. So why were they here? Experimentation, technology exchange, and it was like a field trip. That's one case. The other case is the case of George Adamski, November 1952, Desert Center. Orthon, the books on Adamski, there's a brand new book called They Are Here, Visitors Without Passports, by Michel Zerger, and he's French. They Are Here, Visitors Without Passports. Read that. It tells all the visitations of the 50s, 53, 55, 56 of space people coming with a particular warning that we needed to curb our capacity to destroy ourselves through the bombs. The first one was the A bomb, and then there was the H bomb that came right after that. And they are telling us that we don't need to do that much testing, and that we should not use that as the ultimate weapon, because you know and I know that's a chess game. You know, whether North Korea has a nuclear, capacity and we have a nuclear capacity, the only way you win is checkmate. There's no winning anything like that. So those were the messages for George Adamski. The flying saucers have landed, and I knew Desmond Leslie, who wrote the book. So I'm studying back the messages from those days, which really, in the 50s and 60s, is not different from today. We're living on the edge of self-destruction, which is absolutely insane. And so what do I think? I think that they really don't want to see this planet destroyed. And then they want to wake up people. And your show is called Universal Consciousness. So let me add one other thing, Diana. The only way that I can do anything is by producing a conference in Laughlin, Nevada every year, and this is the 5th year, that is UFOs and consciousness. So it's more raising and waking up people with real cases and real situations. And this year it's November 2nd through 4th at the Aquarius Hotel. If people want to come and have an intelligent dialogue, I have 18 speakers, and they are international. And the theme is the return of the star people, but it's Native American. So the website for that is starworksusa.com. So that's my contribution to an intelligent dialogue about the road that this planet is taking.
Yeah, I looked at that, and I see there's a phenomenal list of speakers on there.
Well, they're international, and that's what we're missing, In the States, we have the same old people speaking, and we get the same information, where I have Ricardo, Latin America, Steve Merrick, UK, Birgit Klaus from Barcelona. I have Danny Sheehan, who is the lawyer for the Lakota Sioux just now that won the case for the water protectors, and he was also the counsel for the citizen hearings in Washington, D.C., which I attended, and the Disclosure Project with Stephen Greer. So we have all of these speakers, we have panels, and we have Native Americans who are going to tell us about the people from the stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now you also have written some books. I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because I looked at that list, and the interviews in there, that's the household names. They're all in those books. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I'll tell you, I've interviewed Al Bielek, the Philadelphia Experiment, Dan Burrish, who worked with a J-Rod at Area 51, who was a time traveler. I've interviewed Uri Geller, who's a good friend of mine. I've interviewed John Mack, who told me that abductions had stopped in 1994, and what we have in the field, unfortunately, is this thing. I don't know how much DNA people need to take. He had told me before he died, Dr. John Mack, Harvard University, that people were being directly downloaded. In other words, that they weren't necessarily taken, that they got ideas, they were being downloaded. Scientists are being downloaded. In other words, people are getting inspiration from the cosmos to change the order. So the books are, the first one, Connecting the Dots, Making Sense of the UFO Phenomenon. That one has John Mack, but it also has Monsignor Balducci, who was my good friend, who was Vatican nuncio, and said that Jesus is called King of the universe, not of the planet Earth, but of the universe 66 times in the Bible, which means there's other planets out there that have people on them. And Balducci is in there, Uri's in there, because I have a whole section on remote viewing, and that's the first book. And then How Do You Speak to a Ball of Light is all about orbs, the orb phenomenon. I'm sure you've had guests talk about orbs and the orb phenomenon, and the problems with with orbs because we had some problems in Italy. And the one, All of the Above and Beyond, is kind of my favorite because it talks about the Charles Hall case. It talks about Alan Hynek. It talks about a lot of different things. But and these are interviews that are in there. But at the very end, I have 5 Latin American contactees that talk about what happened in the 1970s when Sisto Paz Wells and his brother Charlie went into the Chilca Desert in Peru, and met with space people coming off ships. Mm-hmm. And a physical, I mean, I interviewed all of them. They were a group of young boys. I interviewed them, and the story was the same, that I think this is what happened, Augie. The 1950s, they tried to talk to Eisenhower. They tried to talk to the contactees like Howard Menger in New Jersey, Van Tassel, and Daniel Fry and Adamski. And when that didn't work and the government only wanted to look at the craft, they wanted the propulsion system. They were shooting down craft. They're interested in the propulsion system, the craft. They're not interested in the beings. Those beings knew they had to go to Latin America because I believe, and this comes from Paula, that the only connection you can have with an extraterrestrial is a heart connection. You can't have an intellectual connection. They are much more evolved. So I think the people that have the greatest hearts live in Peru, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina. I think the people in Latin America have the biggest hearts, and I think that the beings, when they get off the ship, they can go straight and have a heart connection with these people, and nobody is asking how the ship works, the propulsion system, and all that. I think that's why most of the contacts in that book, All of the Above and Beyond, has the contactee stories of Latin America, and that's what I've learned up until now.
Yeah, that's why the stories in that book is phenomenal, because I think you're right. South America is, first of all, more open to this, and also they have more Native Americans which stay closer to the Earth. And
that's true, and they will see a being come up to them, and they will treat him like a normal being, and the being feels comfortable in their, in that environment. So there's a lot of stories of healings. I mean, they've healed people in villages and everything there. Whereas you talk here, and all they care about, all the interviews are, the craft, what was inside the craft. I mean, how does it work? Free energy, all this and all that. And I do believe we have downed craft. I do believe we have free energy. I do believe that we have all these technologies, but they will never be released to the public until they find a way to pay for them, that have the public pay for them. Instead, these technologies could save the planet. They could save the planet from poverty, global warming, and so forth. And unfortunately, this is a country that has that secret. So unfortunately, this is a country that's not going to do the open disclosure. I mean, all the other countries opened up their files. They opened up the UFO files. And this country, we had the New York Times article. That's about as close as you're going to get. The New York Times, talking about back engineering. That's as close as you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. We will never have disclosure from the government. I think there will be disclosure, but that may come from the visitors themselves.
Yeah, but unfortunately, if you read Arthur C. Clarke's book, Childhood's End, all the visitors go over every airport on the planet. They're over every airport at the same time, and that is interpreted as an invasion, and we don't want that, because we don't want an interpretation as if we're being invaded, because then we send up all our technology to shoot at, and we start a war, and it's ridiculous. The beings have shut down the airport in Beijing last year, something like 4 or 5 times. The airport in China has been shut down over UFOs. So, and they talk about it. And in Germany too, in 2009 there was a case in Bremen. Diana, you might look up that case where the airport was shut down, and the UFO was seen by a soccer team that was playing soccer. And they stopped the game and they looked up. And I learned about that because I get the soccer magazine from Italy. So it was too funny. Yeah, it was 2009 over Bremen. And you know, the thing is, I keep track of all this because I know that in other countries this is happening, but the United States, you know, other than the Phoenix Lights, which is, you know, they're still saying it's flares. It just isn't covered.
Yeah. It is so mind-boggling what's going on. That now I see now that we got 4 minutes left of the show, and for the last 4 minutes here, give us your final thought, and also let us know where we can get a hold of you, and again your email. I'm not an email, but the web address, and also where they can go to the Return of the Star People conference and what you're doing there.
Okay, well, first of all, my personal email has my books, and there's 5 of them. I just named 3. The latest book that I just wrote was on Colonel Philip Corso, because I was the journalist that had him speak the most, because I brought him to Italy. Here in the United States, our own people were criticizing him, our own researchers. I'm not going to name them, but they crucified Colonel Corso. And Colonel Corso worked at the Pentagon in the 1960s, and because of an agreement he made with General Trudeau, he was asked to back engineer the Roswell artifacts and take them to huge companies. In the end, the people that are keeping the secrets are 300 conglomerates, huge companies that have vested interest in technology. And so Colonel Corso was in charge of that, unfortunately, and he talks about it in the book Conversations with Colonel Corso that's on Amazon. And you can see this at Paola Harris, Paola Harris.com, which is my website, paulasharris.com. It gives you all the latest. It has my books on it. And I have the interview of the month on there. And the last one I did was the daughter of Kenneth Arnold, who was in 1947 the one to coin the word flying saucer, and was the pilot that saw the flying saucers over Mount Rainier. So that is on my website, all that. But the conference is where people need to come together and talk. And that is the part I love. I mean, because we have intelligent dialogues. You won't see little statues of gray aliens there. I mean, you won't see silliness. You'll see the cosmos, and we have the Hubble telescope pictures and so forth. And that is November 2nd through 4th in Laughlin, Nevada. And the website for that is starworksusa.com. To register for that, it's 18 speakers, 2 films, 2 movies that are documentaries, a cocktail party, and a dinner, and it's all one price. And the hotel is the Aquarius Resort Hotel, and the rooms are only $49 a night and $59 on the weekend. So it's really affordable. And it's near, I mean, for people who want to go to Nevada, then they go to Area 51. They can go to see different things in Nevada. So my effort to change things is really the conference. People can read all the work I've done, and that's done for historical purposes. But I would like, and this is my final note, I would like some university to make this a legitimate subject that intellectuals will discuss. And I do teach online classes with Dr. Michael Sala, Exopolitics Institute. So if you want to take classes through the Exopolitics Institute, I do teach 4 different classes.
Yeah, okay, wonderful. Well, this was so great. I really enjoyed this. This was very interesting. So I thank you very much for being with us.
Well, you're welcome. It was a pleasure, and thank you. I love the fact that there are shows about consciousness. That's the bottom line.
Yes, that's going to be our salvation. It all come through consciousness in this mind-created universe we are living in. So thank you very much for being here. And then we will be back next week with the Universal Consciousness Show. And until then, take care of each other.
Thank you. Bye-bye.